Dan Hoard's one of those broadcasters that's living a dream. University of Cincinnati play-by-play, Cincinnati Bengals. So the weekends are, of course, loaded, but also the prep work. He joins us, the voice of Cincinnati Bearcats Athletics on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul David Smoke. Dan, thank you very much for your time. So what did Cincinnati learn last year? It was your first year in the Big 12, and how much do you feel like they've been able to change to perhaps correct what they needed to?
Well, it was obviously a tough year, and it was going to be a tough year under any circumstances, making the jump from the American Athletic Conference to the Big 12. But it was doubly tough for Cincinnati because we lost Luke Fickell. We had a coaching change. That's always difficult. In this day and age, when you have a coaching change, you lose a ton of your players, and that was the case for UC. So it's a much more stable situation this year, and I would anticipate Cincinnati to be much, much better than it was a year ago.
How much of that is also just Scott Satterfield, just attaining some level of balance of these are the guys I want on my roster, these are the guys that want to be on my roster, and now he kind of knows where he is across the board, as opposed to last year it felt so much like patchwork where there's a lot of good, still some good players, but none of them had really played together.
Yeah, I think that's a really good description. I think there was some weeding out, quite honestly, of guys that didn't fit his system, maybe didn't have the personality that he wanted to have on his roster. They really paid attention to that, not only in their high school recruiting, but in their transfer portal recruiting, trying to get guys that bought in and wanted to be part of his culture at Cincinnati. So I know the coaching staff feels really good about it based on spring football, and we'll see how much it carries over once the games begin.
What are your thoughts on the early reviews of Brendan Sorsby, bringing him in this spring and putting him, obviously he's there at the quarterback spot, but putting him into the mix and trying to improve off, obviously, a very, as we've touched on multiple times now, a very rocky first season with Emory Jones. Can Brendan Sorsby be the guy that kind of gives him that calm hand, or what do you expect of him?
I think he is the favorite to be the starting quarterback going into training camp at the beginning of August. It's not a certainty that he's going to be the starter. They have Brady Lichtenberg back, who played a little bit last year. But I would say based on spring football, it's almost a certainty that Brendan Sorsby will be the starter. Did a nice job at Indiana University last year. He's a big, strong kid. I mean, he looks like Ben Roethlisberger back there in terms of his size. But he's not a runner. He's a thrower. And I think he's going to be a good fit. I thought he looked good in spring football. The personality is exactly what they're looking for out of the quarterback position. He's a leader and a type A personality. So I'm really excited about the possibility it'll be a significant upgrade from Emory Jones last year.
You mentioned Fickell, who's obviously now at Wisconsin, who did a great job. Was there like a hangover that he was gone?
I wouldn't describe it as a hangover as much as just a total change in personnel. They had one offensive starter back last year from Luke Fickell's last team, and it was an offensive lineman. So it's really hard to move up in level in conference under those circumstances. So Luke Fickell did an incredible job at Cincinnati. I like him a lot personally, and I think he'll do well at Wisconsin. But if you look at Cincinnati's history, nearly every head coach that they've had, at least in recent history, has done extremely well, whether it's been Mark D'Antonio, Brian Kelly, even Butch Jones before he left for Tennessee, and obviously Luke Fickell at the top of the list. So I feel good about the likelihood that over the course of a few years, Scott Satterfield will ultimately be very successful.
How much of it was also for Scott Satterfield, where he left a situation where it got weird at Louisville for both sides of that, and part of that was just because he was not Jeff Brom when they hired him, and everybody wanted Jeff Brom. Now that's who they have. He's able to now go to Cincinnati where he was wanted, and the staff there brought him in, and that whole tumultuous year just personally has to be maybe weigh on you as a coach as well.
I'm sure it was tough for him, but coaches go through that when they change jobs. It's not uncommon for somebody to come in and have kind of a tough first year. And he's experienced a lot in his coaching career. He knows what he was getting into and leading Cincinnati into that jump into the Big 12. So I thought he handled it well. we've done a lot of speaking engagements together this off season, and he seems to have a good relationship with the Cincinnati fan base. Ultimately, he's going to have to win. They all do. But I would anticipate that Cincinnati will make a significant step forward this year.
Dan, what was your impression of just the first year in the Big 12? I mean, the new stadiums, the new teams. There's going to be more new, obviously, next year as well, with another 4 rolling in. But does Cincinnati feel like it's still kind of finding its place? And just what were maybe some things that stood out from the new partnership in year one?
Well, from a broadcasting standpoint, it was awesome. It was great to be in those venues. It was great to see the excitement level that all of the Big 12 cities seem to have for their football programs. Let's face it, that wasn't always the case in the American. There's some teams in that league that have great followings. There are other teams in that league that have empty seats every Saturday, and a significant number of them. That's not really the case in the Big 12. So from that standpoint, I thought it was great. Obviously, the level of football was very challenging in year one for Cincinnati, but as I kind of alluded to earlier, whatever league Cincinnati has been in historically, it's a little bit rough early on, and then within a few years, they're one of the better teams in the league. And maybe I'm being a homer and thinking that will be the case again, but the state of Ohio has incredible high school football. Ohio State can't keep them all. Cincinnati gets its share of the local talent, and I think being in the Big 12 is going to help. I do think that over the course of time, Cincinnati will be one of the better programs in the Big 12.
So in week 2, they have Townsend, and then they play Pittsburgh, who they beat last year, which had to be without a doubt. They won 3 times, their best win, even though they won a game at Houston. Pittsburgh 27-21. Does that kind of set the tone on that game in week 2 for the rest of at least the middle section of the year?
Honestly, I think the first 4 games of the season are going to set the tone. If you're Cincinnati, your goal this year is to have a winning record and go to a bowl game. Maybe they can do better than that, but I think that's kind of the baseline for success. And if you look at the first 4 weeks, Towson in week 1, Pitt at home in week 2. They beat Pittsburgh on the road last year. Miami University, or Miami of Ohio, as it's probably known down there, in week 3. And then the conference opener at home against Houston in week 4. There's a real opportunity there to start 4-0. And if they can do that and only need a couple of wins, 2 or 3 wins the rest of the year after a start like that to have a winning record and go to a bowl game, that would really set them up in a great spot. So I really think those first 4 games of the season are going to be pivotal for Cincinnati to have the kind of year that it wants to have.
How much fun has it been to watch the development, and now that he's staying, Dante Corleone?
Dante Corleone is awesome. I think 2 years ago, in their final year in the American, you could make the case he was one of the best defensive players in all of college football. Pro Football Focus had him rated number 1 of any defensive player in the country. And they had a different defensive coordinator last year. I don't think the system was quite as friendly to Dante Corleone to do the kinds of things that he does so well. I think they're going to get back to some of those things this year under their current defensive coordinator. It's coming from Iowa State. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play again. I think as a Cincinnati broadcaster and Cincinnati fan, we all feel very fortunate that Dante Corleone not only elected to come back for another year of college football, but elected to come back and play at Cincinnati.
Dan, you have to juggle it with, of course, the games, both Cincinnati and then you have the Bengals, Joe Burrow and company, and expectations there. So take us through a week of you wrap up a game Sunday most likely with Cincinnati, whether it's a noon game or even a late game. Kind of take us through the week of how you manage and prepare for Saturday, Sunday, the next weekend.
So here is my basic routine. On Monday, I do the bulk of my Bengals opponent homework. And it's kind of an all-day project to feel like you're ready to do a game. On Tuesday, I do the same for my University of Cincinnati opponent. So if, say, the Bengals are playing the Steelers the next week and the Bearcats are playing Baylor, I would do my Steelers work, or at least the bulk of it on Monday, my Baylor homework, or the bulk of that on Tuesday, and then I put myself in a position to continue to add things on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to be ready for the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Now, I've got other duties as well. There are coaches' shows. Mm-hmm. There are Bengals TV and radio shows. So it's not like I've got 5 days to prepare every week for just 2 broadcasts. There are plenty of other things to do. But I've really found that if I get the bulk of that homework done on Monday and Tuesday, then I should be in really good shape for Saturday and Sunday.
Has everybody in Cincinnati ordered the bubble wrap to keep Joe Burrow in game to game so that you guys don't have to go through what you went through last year?
I just finished golfing with his dad today, Jimmy Burrow, and I feel very good about the likelihood that Joe Burrow is going to be healthy at the start of training camp. And now you're right. Now it's a matter of keeping him healthy through the course of the year. Bubble wrap isn't going to do it, but an improved offensive line would help. They signed Trent Brown. They drafted Amarius Mims in the first round out of Georgia. I feel reasonably confident that this is the best offensive line that Joe Burrow has had in his 5 years in Cincinnati. And if they keep him healthy, the Super Bowl is in New Orleans this year. It'd be natural for Burrow and Chase to return to the Superdome. So I'm hoping that I'm speaking it into existence on this radio show.
Yeah, you can smoke a cigarette a victory cigar in the post game. So you do all that Monday through Friday, game Saturday, game Sunday, and then rinse and repeat and do it again. It's kind of like you're in a way, a football team doing what they do to get ready for the opponent coming up on the weekend. I was curious about that. Dan, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. We hope to see you. Will you be at Big 12 Media Days?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm coming in on Monday. Cincinnati will have its sessions with the media on Tuesday, and then we are leaving immediately after their media responsibilities are done. So it'll be a quick trip to Vegas, but I will be there on Monday and most of Tuesday.
We'll hope they see you there. We'll be broadcasting Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate your time on Cincinnati football. Dan Hoard with us, voice of Cincinnati, the Bearcats, and also, of course, of the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, if Burrow can